What's up? I've been recording this whole time. No, I started like 13 seconds ago. It's because you were ranting about Taylor Swift for 10 minutes. To me, a person that is on your side.
We all said Bruno Mars is so much better.
Yes, of course he is.
Better. I'd say Bruno, out for the 2010s, it goes Bruno, Drake, Ed Sheeran, maybe
Ed Sheeran.
Kendrick.
Definitely Kendrick.
J. Cole.
Lil Wayne.
Beyonce,
Nicki
Rihanna,
Minaj.
Then
Adele. Oh my God, Adele.
Adele would be up there. Then at the bottom.
Okay, you know what? No, she deserves to be on that list. I just don't think she deserves to be number one on that list. But I also think like we're letting our own personal biases come into play here. But then also like let's also like for good measure say racism has a role to play in this.
No. Taylor Swift is just okay. She's good. She's not great. Anyways, hi, hello, and welcome to the Utajua Hujui podcast, brought to you by Aileen, or I don't know, Miss A. Or
I've been just calling myself Aileen. I'm okay with my name. No. Listen. I'm going to reclaim the name Aileen because the only other famous person with my first name is a fucking serial killer. Yes, who has been through a lot, and like I'm not gonna say that justified her many murders.
A serial killer has been through a lot.
Well, yeah. You just don't become a serial killer.
Don't be me. My life is hard. don't be me. Just be who you are.
No, I am being who I am. No, I'm not.
You see, like me, like the person who sits in the middle. That's something I could say, and everyone would be like, "Kariithi, you're such a useless joker," and move on.
But it's the truth.
For example, have you heard of the Subway Man?
The guy who was a pedophile?
Imagine.
Can
I say he's been through a lot?
I mean, I feel like you'd be fair, but it doesn't justify it.
There's three things that you can't speak about and say that they've been through a lot. 1, pedophilia. 2, rape. And 3, serial killing.
Okay, still no, but it actually matters. It does because it explains the why of why they did what they did. Because that reaction is not a normal reaction to shit.
But I'm just saying,
so it's important to understand why.
Those are the three things where you can't really justify it.
Also,
I can say that I'm trying to think of one that won't get me shot. I can say that Putin.
Has
a mind.
I swear to God, I kind of want the Kremlin right now to like.
I'm saying he's not crazy, but can I say Manson?
Oh, Charles Manson was batshit crazy.
Or the guy who ate us here in Kenya. There was a guy who I think in Nakuru who used to just
see.
Can I say they had? I can say a world leader who didn't put the knife through your heart is the one who did it, but like had a point, but.
Okay, listen, I'm not saying she had a point. I'm saying you need to understand her past in order to understand her present. And also, as I was about to say, I am also heavily biased towards understanding her because we share a first name.
Have you watched Glee?
Yes, I've watched Glee.
Park from Glee.
Isn't he the one that slept with an adult and like was basically kind of like he needed some help?
They found a lot of. I hear they just call it CP now so that they're not attacked.
Yeah.
In his house, he was arrested.
Yeah.
I think killing himself. Like, did he have was he justified in his action?
The thing I'm saying is not about justification, right? But like in order to understand why these people do the things that they do, it's important. That's the thing. It's important to understand them so that we can like, if we identify those same signs in other people, we might be able to help them. We might be able to better support them, right? The same thing with Aileen Wuornos, because her name is Aileen, not Aileen. My name is Aileen. So with Aileen Wuornos, like if you actually go through her story, like holy fuck, it's one of those things of what else could she have possibly done? But you also see all the places where, as a society, she was failed consistently. Which is not to say society like it's I guess the America's fault that she committed all the serial killings, right? But that lack of support contributed to the path her life eventually took. It's called having empathy. Having said this, I don't extend this to pedophiles or like child rapists.
You see, but anyways, what I will say as my closing remark with this situation is that the problem with serial killers is that it's not that the system failed them. Because we all know the system failed them.
Yes.
The system has failed all of us.
Yes.
In some way or the other.
Yes.
The issue with serial killers, serial anything, is that the system failing you is not an excuse. Because guess what? Out of all the people who have become serial killers,
that's the point.
Another 3/4 or 90%.
But that's the point. But that's the point, because we've all been fucked by this system. How is it that their reaction to it was so negative?
Exactly. So
that's why we need to study it.
We say, so you go, watch Mindhunter, get a psychologist, let the FBI do it.
I think that's why we're also fascinated by true crime, because we all at some level recognize that the system has failed us. But we all are like, we're not ending up there. So we all want to figure out, how do we not end up there? What steps do we need to avoid?
Other than history, my best genres of
true crime,
of documentaries, true crime
podcasts are the best,
and con men,
true crime con men,
like con stories, like Don't F with Cats.
Oh my god, that man, Luca Magnotta.
Wow. Or who sold Pepsi? Where's my jet? Oh my god.
My favorite ones are the ones that were like parental stuff into sex with the murder mystery stuff. So you have Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, which was about like the fundamentalist Mormons and like how basically living in an environment like that can breed abuse. And then you have, my other one was the one where I think a mom I think ended up encouraging her partner to like kill her babies or something, because I don't know, but that shit happens. Anyway, that's not why we're here.
You can now introduce yourself officially.
Oh, hi, my name is Aileen. I'm sitting across from Kariithi. We finally got the microphone to work, and I'm actually very happy about that. Ooh. Actually, no, big up to Kariithi. Big up. Thank you so much for helping me with the audio for this one.
Yeah, Aileen, by the way, guys, is really bad with technology.
Wow.
So she required
projecting much.
Like even when we worked together, I used to help her with technology all the time. She just asked me, how do you do this with Excel? How do you do this on PowerPoint?
And on that note of one of us knowing less than the other, let's us continue with the game we did for the part 1. True or false? I'm going to give you a series of statements, and then you have to decide if they're true or false, and then I will call you out on your bullshit. Are you ready?
I'm 100% ready to be 100% right.
Okay, so fact number 1. The Catholic Church once put a dead pope on trial for becoming pope legally.
Which? Who put him on trial?
I can't tell you that. The fact is the fact.
True.
It is actually true. It is actually true.
I assume that because you normally fight the powers of the Catholic Church. So
okay, as if those powers are not to be fought.
I knew it was gonna be a fact where you'd be like, yes.
No, but also it's a bit ridiculous. So what happened was this in 897, Pope Stephen's the sixth, I think. No,
yeah, VI is 6. IV is 4.
So Pope Stephen VI exhumed the body of his predecessor and was like, you became pope legally, and to cleanse the papacy of your many crimes, we have to put you to trial. The guy is dead. He's been dead for months. Why are you doing this? Is my question. Yes. Every single person in history is like, what? This was completely unnecessary. Moving on. Fact number 2. The CIA once tried and failed to kill Fidel Castro 638 times in 42 years.
Now, this is the only problem I have with that question. I know for a fact that the CIA in America tried to kill Castro at least 40 times. The question I have is that number 600. 600 is...
If you want, I can give you some background on that number.
True. But anyways, yes.
Oh, it's false, by the way.
I was wrong. It is the number.
So we need to, like you said, differentiate between an attempt on his life that like left the WhatsApp group and something that just remained within the chat. I think only 24 attempts were actually tried.
See, it's like, I think for Hitler it was like 41. For Castro, it was like people are tried. And I'd assume the one that succeeds the most with these world leaders is just one.
Which is?
Women.
Yes.
That's the one that works.
Yes, but even with Fidel, apparently he saw right through it.
I mean, you're fighting against...
America.
Yeah, you know how petty they are. You have to be a bit careful with regards to those issues.
Are you ready?
Are you ready, kids?
Aye. Number 3. In the 1950s, the US government poisoned San Francisco with a bioweapon, impacting close to 1 million people.
Did they die? That's my question. Did they die?
Some of them went to the hospital.
True.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, as long as you didn't say they died. If they died, then it was false.
It's true. So it's actually called Operation Sea Spray, and it was led by the US Navy to see how a large metropolitan city would react to a bioweapon attack.
Oh my goodness.
But then they told no one. They told no hospital it was coming. They told no cops. They told no government official that they'd done this. They just let it happen and just watched, which is fucked up.
Need to go to the toilet.
11 people actually had to be admitted to hospital.
Yeah.
Out of 800,000. So
That's not bad.
fine, moving on. Number four. Babies are born without kneecaps.
I was just holding a baby the other day. But who feels their kneecaps? It's just full of jiggle. False.
I'm taking that as a false, and you are wrong. It's true. Babies are born with like the pieces of cartilage that will eventually become kneecaps, but because it takes about 3 years for like it to become like an actual hard surface.
That's why they're so flexible.
Yeah, and so pudgy.
It's like a baby can't break its ACL.
Sure. I don't know what an ACL is, but sure.
Anterior cruciate ligament.
Is that on your ankle somewhere?
It's on the knee.
Oh, that sounds like it sucks. Ooh.
It's not nice.
Shit, okay. All right, for this last one, it's going to be a show and tell, a demonstration.
Ooh.
As you can see, I have pineapple before me and 2 forks.
Uh-huh.
And apparently, adding salt to pineapple makes it taste sweeter. So first, okay. First, we're going to figure out, do I think it's true? Do you think it's true?
I did not even notice you bringing salt to the table. Pineapple is best for its sweetness.
So you think it's false?
I think it's false.
Okay, because there has to be some representation. I think it's true. So we need to...
The one positive here is at least you actually came wanting to share pineapple.
I always share my fruit.
Okay, maybe your fruit is never as enticing as this pineapple is. This pineapple looks... Whew, I'd like to take that one home, baby. And I am home.
This took a weird turn that I have a lot of mixed feelings about. Not all of them are entirely positive, so I'm just going to put a pineapple piece in my mouth.
How do you have negative? How do you have any...
Because you're sexualizing my fruit.
It looks juicy. Now, that's a problem with society, that the word juicy has been put in your brain to think of something else.
Yeah.
That's a juicy pineapple.
Can you... First piece without salt.
Let's see if these yellow pineapples actually taste how they look.
Ooh, okay. Okay, so that's not bad. I'm not... It's sweet enough.
I say 8 out of 10.
No? Okay. And I'm putting salt. I'm terrified. Yuck.
Yeah, she's lying. She's not putting any salt. No, more salt.
No, that's enough salt. That's enough salt. See here, listen. ASMR.
She's put it on, it's a extension on her.
Okay, no, you can see the salt.
Fine.
Okay, fine. Ready?
Good luck.
Actually, it's not as bitter. No, try it. Don't knock it before you try it.
Still false.
What?
Mainly because you gave me the power to be right. But honestly, it does take the bitterness out of it. However, think of it, how healthy this is. Sitting with your fruit and pouring salt in every piece as you eat it.
Nobody said you had to do this.
I mean, it tastes nice.
It's like, I think the next thing I want to try, if I can ever stomach the taste of honey, is watermelon and honey, because apparently that slaps.
Let me tell you what slaps. Now, these pineapples, cut them up and put them in natural yogurt. No sugar, nothing else. And eat. You will have the time of your life. The acidity and sweetness that comes, c'est magnifique.
And so on that note of like things being magnifique, etc.
Pineapples, by the way.
Okay, thank you for the heads up. You know what kind of podcast this is. This is obviously a drink-friendly podcast, although admittedly, I have not had a drink on this podcast consistently for a while. And that's okay. It's called I'm maturing. And as I mature, my preferences mature with me.
You know we hang out outside of the podcast, yes?
Right?
You know that, yes?
I haven't recorded drunk in a minute.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
That you've matured, that you're not drinking as much. Excuse me.
No. I am not drinking as much. Trust me.
I will tell you.
Trust me.
I'll tell the world your secrets.
They're not that bad anyway. So, as I was saying, as I mature, my preferences and my friends mature with me. And I am drinking the usual, the Kariithi Gold green tea and mint.
The purple one.
It's delightful. It's minty fresh. I'm having a lot of fun.
I'm trying to give my ice cream minty fresh breath.
I'm not trying to give you ice cream anything. Can you please relax?
Which sanitary individual puts a spoon in their tea?
That's clean. It's hot water.
And then now puts it in an ice.
Because I haven't drunk the tea. It's practically fresh.
So you're taking your mint tea and putting it in my spoon and then
it's functionally water. Like there is no... I didn't even dip it for long enough for the flavors to marinate. Can we please move on? Stop airing our dirty laundry to our podcast audience, please.
I forgive you.
On that note, if only the Kenyan state could have been as forgiving of Robert Ouko and his many supposed crimes.
Good work.
Thank you. So, when we last left off, we discussed the life of Robert Ouko and how he rose to become the foreign policy mind of, I think, many generations, if I have that correctly.
As I said, many people thought he was the greatest ever foreign affairs minister this country has ever had.
Yeah. And then we talked about how he was murdered. We talked about like how 2 days before, when he went to church, he read this almost what's what I'm looking for? Prophetic word from like Job 7:1-14, where he was talking about how like he's just tired and he wants to rest and he's doing all this work and it's all for nothing.
Isn't Job the most depressing Bible book in the Bible?
It is. That's why I completely understand why, despite theologians suggesting that it may have been the first book ever written, they shove it in the middle of the Bible. Because by the time you get to it, you've already gone on an emotional roller coaster. You can deal with Job. So, how did we get here?
We're talking about Job and how this guy...
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. And then we talked about how at around between 3 to 6 a.m. on the 13th of February, I believe, his househelp, Selena, found, or rather heard, the gate to his complex opening and closing. She saw a white car. She's heard a door opening, but she thought nothing of it because she was like... Like whatever, he's entitled to do whatever he wants to do. I'm not gonna think about it.
He's going to see the president.
But then on the 13th he was missing. He didn't come home. On the 15th is when he was officially reported missing in public. Missing. It was when he was officially reported missing by his family and like the government officials. And then on the 16th, his body was officially found by a police officer. They found his body basically burned. His leg had been broken and he had been shot in the head. There were signs of torture and light bruising or heavy, like bruising in general, on his torso. And on his person, they found his state-issued .38 caliber gun.
Wow, you know what 38 is.
They found some bullets. They found a jerry can, which they suspect probably held a diesel that burned him alive. They found his walking stick. And interestingly, forensic evidence would later reveal that they found a single strand of Caucasian hair, which is hella sus. So eventually, when the state pathologist came through, he was told, or rather he concluded that it had been a suicide, which makes no sense because, in fact, his initial theory was that he had set himself on fire and then shot himself, which makes no sense because then who broke his leg? Right? So eventually, due to the unrest that this government official and his theory, due to the unrest that his statement caused, Moy invited the head, like somebody from Scotland Yard, to come investigate this thing. And that was the name of the man called Inspector Troon. And pretty quickly, he already had like a list of suspects that we are going to survey / catalog today.
And you mentioned them, if I remember.
In order of likelihood. Okay, fine. Remember.
Okay, in your order or in my order?
In your order. I've come to realize that your order makes sense.
So my least one was crime. Because that just is nonsense. Number 2, least one, this is from least to best, was suicide. And the next one, President Moi. No, Anguka, Moi, and then Hezekiah Oyugi, and Biwott.
Okay. Yeah, those are all the suspects. So it was crime, Ouko himself, his family, Anguka, Hezekiah Oyugi, Nicholas Biwott, and finally Daniel Arap Moi.
And you should also just put there, because I believe this is just a thing in Africa, business partners.
And business partners.
Thank you.
So first things first, wow, not this man adding salt to his pineapple.
Why are you lying?
For the last bite. Oh my god.
Vindication!
First, Ouko himself. So as I said, the Kenyan police latched on pretty quickly to the theory that Ouko had committed suicide, which makes no sense because, like, let's say, for example, that he had set himself on fire and then shot himself. Then where did the bruises on his body come from? Then who broke his leg? Exactly. So because this theory fell under the lightest bit of scrutiny, people moved on very quickly. And so now we have to talk about the possibility that Ouko was just a victim of crime in the area.
Nonsense.
Which is nonsense, because if the crime was robbery, then why did they take his gun?
If it was robbery, why didn't the housemaid get taken out?
Exactly.
Like, why would he be in the middle of nowhere by himself at 3 a.m. in the morning? That the robbers just come in, pick him up?
Yep.
Robbers are not that quiet. They'll come take you, they'll take your house help, they'll take
Yep.
you, whoever is there.
Yep.
And I remember something you said in the previous one, but I'll let you say it because you're the one who's smart.
Sure. I don't remember what I said, so you may have to say.
Money.
Oh, yeah, he did. I think I mentioned it in the first time we tried recording this, that he had 400 shillings in 1990s money, which is basically all the money today, in his pocket.
Relax.
It's all the money today. Even 1,000 bob isn't worth 1,000 bob.
Just saying, relax.
Relax what? It's affecting both of us.
Yeah. The other day I went to the shop, bought onions and yogurt, and I left there, and one doma. I left there having spent 1,400 shillings. I just...
What? How? What yogurt is this? Because that's the only expensive
It's
thing.
yogurt.
Then how could you... Do you mean 140 shillings?
The onions were 611 shillings.
How many onions did you
I
buy?
bought 2 of those packs that you see them Bachelors were not pre-selecting onions. We
But
take
you
them to
should.
gunia. So I took 2 gunias thinking, that's 3 sock. Spent 1,430 shillings.
So on the note of being screwed over,
Yes.
let's move on to our first
You're doing a
person.
good job. You're doing a good
With the transitions, I'm getting a lot better, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're going to consider the case of District Commissioner John Anguka. Now, Anguka was the only man sentenced to jail for the murder. Yes, he was later acquitted, but technically, he was still sentenced to jail for the murder.
Yeah.
And of all the men we're going to discuss today, he is perhaps the only one who had the means and the opportunity. Now, remember that Ouko was last seen entering a DC's car. And his body was found in Nakuru, which is the area that Anguka was in charge of. Furthermore, his wife was Ouko's personal secretary.
Yep.
So Anguka not only had access to his schedule, but also Ouko's trust,
Oh, yes.
which would explain why Ouko felt comfortable leaving his house at 3 a.m. in the morning. Sorry.
Very few people are dragging me out of my house at 3 a.m.
I feel like I could drag you out of this house at 3 a.m. in the morning.
That's unfair though.
Now,
Yes, I would do that for you.
see?
But very few people.
Because I'm not sure if I do that for you. Let me not lie.
See that love? See how reciprocated it is?
Then, he also had, Anguka also had land adjacent to Ouko's farm in Koru. So he had opportunity
Like there's an excuse for him to be there.
to be there conceivably because it just makes sense. Now, everyone kept pointing the finger at him. Selina, Ouko's house help, Barak Mbaja. There we go.
Good job.
Mbaja, because it looked like an eye. So anyway, Mbaja.
Aileen may need some glasses.
This is a typo. I'm pretty sure it's a typo. So Barak Mbajo, his brother as well, also pointed the finger at Ouko. It also didn't help that Anguka kept trying to insert himself and the internal ministry in this investigation. So when Troon landed, he was not met by the lead investigator, which was a chief of the CID, deputy chief of CID. He was met by Anguka. And when Troon asked, hey, who's in charge of this shindig? Anguka told him, oh, it's my boss, Hezekiah Oyugi, when Oyugi was not in charge. So that's, in Troon's mind, that's like, well, that's strike one.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing here? Then strike two was that Anguka was at the scene of the crime within 2 hours of its discovery by the police. Yeah. Now, Koru is nowhere near like the Nakuru DC headquarters. Yes, it's near his home, but like, well, he wasn't expected to be home. That's the other thing.
If in the event you're home and you hear your personals, I mean, you'll be there as quickly, won't you?
And the other thing that also had him a bit suspicious was that, like, he was with the Kenyan pathologist when Dr. Kariithi declared Ouko dead by suicide. He was there kind of just hovering. So it's unclear if his presence was there just to, like, make sure everything was going on well, or if it was a subtle reminder to Kariithi. Remember who's paying your bills, eh? Remember, right? So yeah, everything about Anguka was like suspicious as fuck. And because he is low enough on the totem pole, where like arrest and imprisonment basically means nothing, he was a viable candidate. He was a viable suspect. So on the 26th of November, 1991, he was arrested. He was released 2 weeks later and then rearrested on the 10th of December and charged with murder. In addition to the points raised above, or rather before this, the police also alleged that on the day of the disappearance, Anguka returned home at 5 a.m. Remember Ouko, Selena...
Between 3 and 6?
Rather, that's when Selena said she thought he'd left the house, between 3 and 6. His official car had covered 270 kilometers with excess fuel that he was not able to account for. And when the driver went to collect him for his duty at 7:30 in the morning, the day Ouko disappeared, Anguka was fast asleep, which is weird, because he was always awake at that time. And then after the murder, apparently, the police alleged that Anguka summoned the administrative police officers who were guarding his residence and told them to say that he had been home at all evenings in the week leading up to the day that Dr. Ouko was murdered. So now you have means, you have opportunity. The only thing that's missing is motive. The police argued that Anguka's wife was having an affair with Dr. Ouko.
Can I pause for 1 second?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm wondering if I'm the first to ever discover this. He said means, motive, and opportunity.
Yeah.
Mom. Mom, I'm telling you. M-O-M, Mom. Mind blown. You should put that noise there. Mind blown.
Okay.
Means, opportunity, and motive. Mom! Back to you.
So as for the motive, That's how
Aileen says I've done a good job.
As for I have complimented you twice in this episode. If I know you've done a good job, I will say it with my chest.
No, you wouldn't.
I might say it with my chest.
She admitted it to myself literally just 3 days ago. She's like, I will say this once and one time only because I don't like giving you compliments. And then she complimented me.
I can't remember what the compliment is.
Neither
This is
can
amazing.
I.
This is your fault.
It's because these people have just left me so little love.
That's so rude.
Like Linkin Park.
Oh my god. So anyway, so the motive was like Anguka was having an affair with Anguka's wife was having an affair with Ouko, which is like pretty cliche if you ask me, that the big boss man is having an affair with the secretary. It's very unimaginative.
Was she white?
No, Anguka's wife was no.
No, she wasn't white. Okay, I'm still trying to figure out that strand of hair.
We're getting to it. We'll get to it. But unfortunately, like even the police couldn't prove the affair. Yeah. So without the motive, like the entire case falls apart because if Anguka doesn't really have a reason to do this, then it doesn't really make sense.
I'd like to readjust my line of suspects. But anyways, continue.
Okay. So for his part in his book, Anguka denies any involvement in the murder. He profusely professes his innocence, and I personally am inclined to believe he's innocent of the murder, but not of the cover-up. And this is because, like, a DC doesn't touch a minister without somebody else's approval. And he does not interfere with that investigation without somebody telling him, I need a guy there. Maybe he doesn't have the details about what happened, but he also understood the assignment was to make sure the truth would never be found out. So let us now consider who might have given him the orders to be there. And we're going to start at the very top. We're going to start with Daniel Arap Moi. Arap Moi. Simply because his is the easiest case to disprove. Because by the early 1990s, the Moi regime was on its hind legs. Yeah. Economically, the country was stagnating. Economic growth had halved during his presidency, from an average of 6 to 8% under Jomo to an average to 3 to 4% by the early 1980s. And then by the 1990s, it was an average of 1.3% economic growth every year under Moi. And this is because of corruption. All the money just vanished.
And the West fighting him.
Right? So it doesn't help that when shit is bad, most people tend to then wonder, then why are you in power?
You blame the top.
Right? So because Moi was such an authoritarian, there was no one else we could blame but him. It's the one drawback of being a dictator. If everything goes great, you get all the praise.
One drawback
for the dictator. You have all this power, yes, but if shit hits the fan, it's on your head.
There's many other things.
I'm thinking about this very selfishly. It's the...
You are the ones who hate billionaires and...
I do dislike billionaires intensely. What is there to like about them?
Are you gonna hate yourself?
I don't think I would become a billionaire.
If you become a billionaire, would you hate yourself?
I'd struggle with it, yeah. Because...
Money solves all problems.
Except it doesn't. It creates new ones.
Which can be solved with more money.
Oh my goodness. So politically, Moi had criminalized competitive politics and criticism of his leadership. So... it was so bad that at one public function, a senior minister felt it necessary to say, and I quote, "There," while pointing at Moi, "is enshrined in human form the popular will. Even lobsters and fishes of the sea, out to the 200-mile limit and even beyond, pay obeisance to our great president, the Honorable Daniel Arap Moi."
Who said those words?
I don't know. All it says is just it's very Idi Amin-esque.
That's what.
It's very Idi Amin-esque. No, it's the kind of thing you'd expect somebody to say to him.
Okay, fine, because I was gonna be Idi Amin couldn't put those words together.
No. Yet, for all his domestic failures, Moi actually did pretty well on the foreign policy side, which is why he needed Ouko, because Ouko would cement those foreign policy gains. In between 1981 and 1983, Moi was the head of the OAU. He also got Kenya to join in the 1989 UN peacekeeping mission to Namibia, as well as making sure that he kept the West on his side during the Cold War. So he needed somebody on his side that could, maintain these wins and make sure that he was still beloved by the West. But as the Cold War ended, and that guy would increasingly have to be Ouko, because as the Cold War ended, Moi began to find himself blacklisted by the White House. And the Americans began responding to his requests with aid by just do we have to? We don't, you're a bad look. Do we have to? But meanwhile, they fucking loved Ouko. And that was because Ouko was the kind of guy who could who knew and kind of recognized that corruption was wrong and was very vocal about it. But he knew how to speak their language. He knew how to talk to them. So they liked him. And people allege that it is because he was so well liked by the West that Moi began to see Ouko as a threat. Because Moi knew that it's okay for me to not be loved at home. That's fine. I can suppress my people. But for the West to stop loving me and for them to start loving somebody else is to suggest that they have a person to replace me should they get tired of my bullshit. And that's a threat for Moi. Explain.
I struggle with that.
Why?
I really definitely struggle with that.
Explain.
Number one, you're forgetting that Moi had enemies already. He had people who were already fighting for his throne that the Americans could have supported. Yes, they couldn't have supported Jara, but they could have easily have supported a Kenneth Matiba, who was tortured by Moi.
Or a Kibaki.
Who was at 1990, I think, had already left Moi. Those are more likely sources to support. So in the terms of Moi, he didn't kill Matiba.
Yeah. So why would he kill
Ouko?
What happens if Ouko then gets an audience with the president and he doesn't?
Ouko's not big enough of a threat. As in my eyes, if I was Moy, unless Moy is really jealous. So what if they like him?
So here's the smoking gun incident. Here's why people think it's a credible theory, and I will disprove it because you're right. It's that like while they went to the America, like about a month before Ouko died, they went to the prayer breakfast in Washington. And at this prayer breakfast, Ouko had access to rooms, personnel, and officials that Moy just simply did not. And this access went as far as him being able to meet Daddy Bush, aka Herbert Walker Bush.
That's his name.
George Herbert Walker Bush. HW.
Oh yeah.
What the? Did you just think the HW were just sounds that you say?
George H.W. Bush.
No, it's Herbert Walker.
It's William also.
No, what? Yeah,
It's William Bush and William Bush. He's already called George Bush and George Bush.
So, according to sources, because of this meeting, Ouko was seen as a potential successor to Moy, and by deigning to meet, and as a response to like Ouko's alleged meeting with President Bush, he was ostracized within the delegation. According to Barack Mbaja, Ouko's brother, Biwott, Moy's attack dog, began referring to Ouko as Mr. President with attitude, and Ouko was apparently also suspended from official duty. His passport was confiscated, and he was stripped of his official car and private security. Additionally, Moy allegedly berated Ouko in public, ridiculing him in front of top officials from the Kenyan delegation. And he made it very clear that Ouko would have to find his own way home. Like, it's just giving mean girls, like, you can't sit with us energy. Yes. And so when the entire delegation eventually made their way back to Kenya, the story has it that Moy refused to meet with Ouko. No matter how many times Ouko asked, Moy was like, no. Like, I can't deal with you right now. And days later, allegedly, Ouko's phone was tapped.
That isn't making a bit of sense.
Right? So then days after that, Ouko was then involved in a suspicious road accident. Yeah. Right? And then a week later, Ouko was then found dead in Nakuru. In Koru, in Nakuru. Koru in Nakuru. Yes. But, you know, these are all the facts, or facts, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Have I changed your mind, or are you still thinking now? This isn't Moy's MO.
Like, I can see him say, find your way home. But to the anger point of, like, I kill you for outshining me for a few minutes. I'm still not buying it. But it's getting...
It's credible, right? It's bullshit. It's all bullshit. Let me disprove it systematically. So first, the crux of this theory, that idea that Moy killed Ouko, is that Ouko had access that Moy didn't, thereby fueling his jealousy. And given that he was already in a weak position internationally and domestically, having somebody who was that favored among donors, the West, and everyone was a threat to his presidency. Now, this isn't true, simply because, like, the meeting between Ouko and Bush never happened, so there's nothing to be jealous of, number one. Number two, also Moy had the kind of forethought. He wasn't he called the giraffe of Kenyan politics, because he could see far. The giraffe of Kenyan politics would not kill a man like Ouko. He was much more valuable to him alive than he was dead. Ouko dead is a nuisance to him, because now that's something he has to deal with, something he has to defend himself from, which is a fucking nightmare, especially when you know I didn't do it. But because I've done so many fucked up shit, no one's going to believe me. And he didn't want that. That's reason number one. Second is that, like, the Bush presidency actually had no problem with Moy. In fact, they had wanted him in Washington so that they could renew a promising security agreement with Kenya. So there's no way, absolutely no way, they would offend Moy by inviting his underling to come talk without inviting him.
Of course.
Number three, the facts are also very inconsistent with this theory. Ouko's passport was never confiscated and was in fact found in his wife's possession after his death. So his brother was lying. I mean, could it have been planted? Sure. But, like, we don't know that it was. That's the problem. And you don't want to claim that it was without proof. Also, Ouko also continued to act in his official capacity until his death. He even had a meeting with Moy 3 days after he came back from Washington. In fact, in that meeting, Moy was like, hey, you've been working too hard, take some time off before your next state trip. So there's no factual basis to this idea that Moy acted out like a petty ass girl. No, that's sexist of me. That Moy acted out like a mean girl. Specifically, I'm talking about Regina George, because this is Regina George energy. The fourth basis for why this theory is false is that because the sources of the story, specifically Ouko's brother, he should be taken with a grand old heaping of salt, because around the time when Troon was trying to ask them questions and Troon was investigating it, Troon kind of suspected that they weren't telling him as much as they knew, and that it was also well known that around that same time, Ouko and his brother had fallen out. So what kind of...
His brother was speculating.
Yeah, so like what business do you have? What credibility do you have for you to come and tell me about all these things that happened when you weren't even there? And finally, perhaps most importantly, and to reiterate, if Ouko is a political threat, ordering him killed is fucking weak and also like so stupid.
If you're feeling that pressure, you don't increase the heat. And then you don't say while you're announcing that he's passed away that he was found and you suspect foul play.
Exactly. Like
don't
you don't.
Do that.
So I don't think we're in agreement. Moy was not stupid enough to do this. No. But I do think he knows who did. And then he somewhat tried to shield them.
Protect them.
Because if it's somebody with whom your name is synonymous, if it's one of your trusted advisors, one of your dirty men, even if they acted without your say-so, it's coming to you.
It's like how many of us sort of kind of acknowledge that Jomo may not have been the one to call the order on Tomboya, but bro, did he get the blame?
Exactly. Same thing with JM Karaoke. Like, Jomo might not have necessarily been involved in the murder, but I think he was involved in the cover-up because he knew who did it. So now that takes us to Nicholas Biwott or Hezekiah or Yugi.
Fun fact about Biwott. Well,
is it fun?
Yes, ish.
Okay.
That you know how like we're at a function, they say food is ready. So you and I would line up to get food, yeah. And as we're serving, so like you serve your food, I serve my food, and I'll say, okay, can I take your plate?
What?
If you mind, please.
Why?
Suspecting everyone of poisoning him.
I'd be so mad.
That lady who pretended she had kung fu, that BBC lady who had tasters of her food.
Yeah.
Biwott was like that, so he never ate the food he served.
But if you're at a buffet...
And he'd just take that food, he'd just take it.
But if you're at a buffet, it makes no sense because we're all getting the same food.
No, but things can happen. Someone can pour something on your plate, someone can do something.
But if you're the one serving yourself...
Doesn't care.
But if this is well known, then all you need to do is...
Doesn't care. Biwott, they say, and I think it's a fact, was probably the most paranoid leader Kenya has ever experienced. Because he knew the things he did, and he was very afraid of many demons coming to come and get him.
This is what I find really as a quick tangent, this is what I find really fascinating about like dicks, like the massive dicks of history. Because it's this recognition that what I'm doing is bad. Because you are so paranoid. Because if you genuinely believe that what you're doing is justified, then you would not suspect that somebody would come for your ass.
Yes, like,
you would hope that eventually they'd see, like you are so morally righteous and superior that they would come to see it your way.
I mean, when you've done bad things, you better look behind your back. It's like Stalin, where he'd think a fly, look at a fly is looking him badly, and he'd be like, you know what? We're all emptying this opera house, and I'm going home. See. These are people who they've done bad things, so they know people are coming for them.
And yet these are the same people that like are also in charge of like it's why a son of the most problematic people in history still alive. I'm looking at you, Kissinger.
You have such a problem with that guy.
Kissinger, the man who bombed Cambodia. Like the thing that
you also have problems with FDR.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. Back.
Moving on. Because that was like, yes. So the case for both of these men is built upon the Molasses Project. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like the molasses plant somewhere in Kisumu, I think?
Yeah. Western.
Yeah.
Western?
Yeah, so in part one, I had mentioned that like he had revitalized the molasses plant in his constituency as a way to help the employment figures for that area and like develop his region. Yeah. Then I told you to hold on to that fact, because we're going to come back to it later. Well, bitch, it's back. The theory is that Ouko was made aware of the corruption associated with the project and had come to blows over it with some other government officials, specifically Biwott and Oyugi. Eventually, blows became threats, and then Ouko wound up dead. Now, this is the theory that Troon spent the most amount of time dissecting, discussing, researching, unpacking, and then he said eventually that the allegations of corruption and the dispute with Nicholas Biwott are key, end quote. So now, let me give you a bit of background about this plant. So the molasses plant, which was then properly called the Kenya Chemical and Food Corporation Plant Limited, had been inaugurated in 1977 and abandoned 5 years later. And it is one of the costliest failures in Kenya's industrial history. By its inception, it had been thought up by a man who was already known for like not successfully completing government contracts, and the government still said, go ahead, this is great, because it wasn't about the project, it was about the money that was going to be spent so other people could be corrupt. So even from the jump, it was a vessel of corruption. And by 1981, the government had guaranteed 600 million shillings in loans for the failing project and was being asked to guarantee another $24 million. By 1982, the project was declared unsustainable and just left to rot. This is where Ouko comes in, because right now he was, I think, the Minister of Industry. He believed in the capacity of the project, so he sought quality, corruption-free investors to revitalize the project. One of these was a company, an Italian-Swiss firm called BAK. However, not everyone was on board with his plan, specifically Biwott and Oyugi. They were among the loudest critics of Ouko's efforts and against the attempt to revitalize the project for one reason and one reason alone: commissions. Because, all men wanted they all wanted more than what was on the table. So they kept stalling the project. Now, when Ouko found out about the requests, he kind of realized, I'm fucked. Because a project that he was in charge of, a project that he had championed, a project he had promised his constituents, had been fucked with. And his hands as the anti-corruption crusader was all over this corrupt mess. And as you can imagine, it's a bad look. So allegedly, he began to mount an investigation into the allegations, trying to find some proof. And the rumor has it was that he was writing a report that he wanted to present to President Moi. And that before his death, the briefcases he was seen carrying contained the documents that was going to prove this plot of corruption. But 3 days later, 3 days after he told Moi, hey, can we meet because I have something to discuss with you that's really important, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. 3 days later, he died. Yes. And the briefcase was never found. The documents were never found.
Now we're getting there.
In fact, Troon alleges that these documents were taken from Ouko on the day he disappeared. So for Troon, Ouko died because he was an anti-corruption crusader. Do you agree?
Most plausible.
Why? Why is it the most plausible?
Number one, as I said earlier, I'm a big believer that business plays a lot more of a role in assassinations than people give it to.
Okay.
Number two, it would explain why a John Nguka, who is working for Hezekiah Oyugi, who is working kind of for what would be lurking in behind, and why everyone would be following orders. If you have a person in that much power who is known to make moves like this, I think it makes the most sense that this was a business deal gone wrong. Guy got angry or afraid, and actually, what do they say? What's the most dangerous? The most dangerous animal is not the angry animal.
It's the scared.
And if you scare someone like Biwott, I think you'd be shocked to see to get what you receive. So I think it's the most plausible out of the ones you've made before.
So let me now deconstruct this, because this theory is as weak as all of them.
No, it's not weak.
It's so weak.
So weak.
I know I am.
She always ruins my abilities to have fun.
So the timeline of the project doesn't line up with the timeline of Ouko's death and his life. Despite championing the project in 1987, by the time of his death, not only were Ouko, Biwott, and Oyugi not associated with the project had collapsed again.
Okay.
So in 1989, the project had been declared unsustainable. And because Ouko was moved to the Foreign Affairs docket in 1987, he had nothing to do with this project anymore. He basically just wiped his hands of it and moved the fuck on. Biwat's involvement with the project ended in 1987 when the project was shifted to the Ministry of Industry and Finance and away from the Ministry of Energy. Okay. And Oyugi, as PS for Internal Security, was not involved. Mm-hmm. Which that doesn't mean that like they still weren't asking for money on the side, because like if you're big enough, you're able to have a bird's eye view of government projects. So I'd imagine like you'd be selective about where you're trying to get your extra income from. And if you thought this is a good opportunity, I don't see why you wouldn't make use of your power and access to make sure that you benefited from this opportunity. But then again, this is all conjecture, right? More importantly, official government records show that Biwat and Ouko were of one mind about this project. They both agreed this is bullshit. Like, it's not going to work. Whatever we had planned, it's not going to work. And more importantly, the decisions for the molasses plant were not made by Ouko alone. They were made by cabinet and signed by cabinet. This means that their relationship, there may not have been that friction. Because if Biwat really had a problem with this project, then
why not?
Then why not kill everyone else in cabinet? Why just go for Ouko, right? Second, the sources for this theory are incredibly suspect. Let's just say that Troon got bamboozled by white faces because he believed them more. It's white competence. It's the presumption of white competence coming to bite him in the ass. His entire testimony is built upon his entire theory, Troon's theory, is built upon the testimony of a Swiss-German woman called Marianne Brunner Matten. She might have been the source of the Caucasian hair. Or it could have also been her Italian quote-unquote partner called Domenico Eraghi. Whatever, I'm not going to do the Italian. There we go, Eraghi. I'm just going to call him Domenico or Nico. No, Domenico. I don't want to confuse people. So Domenico. So first of all, these people were not reliable witnesses. By 1987, Domenico was convicted of perjury or lying on the stand and was sentenced to jail. In fact, the justice of the High Court of Milan that sentenced him described him as having displayed, and I quote, the attributes of an international fortune hunter as he sentenced him. Which meant that the entire time that BAK was contracting with Ouko, he had no, like, Domenico was technically a criminal. So why would Troon trust his testimony? Right? It seems like he didn't do that level of digging. Yeah. As for Ms. Brunner Matten, Ms. Marianne herself, this is like a really sexist argument because what makes her unreliable is the fact that she might have been in a sexual relationship with Domenico. And well, it's that, and also the fact that she keeps changing her story. So in the 1987 trial that found Domenico guilty of lying on the stand, Marianne was called to testify in his favor, and she was found to have lied for him. So the question is, what's to stop you from lying again? And again and again and again. And finally, the company that they incorporated, BAK, was only registered on the day he disappeared.
Oh, okay.
So, like, I don't. It's not really a reliable source. Again, Troon fell in for like a white face. He just assumed that they were telling the truth because
he was slightly racist.
Potentially, I don't know. I'm not going to say that just in case he's still alive. Okay, let's move on to the third.
Move on to the fourth theory.
The third reason why the Molasses Project theory makes no sense.
Okay.
Also, why escalate to murder? Like, even in terms of if you're Biwat and you're trying to get revenge, if you assume somebody's going to out you for corruption. Why 1990? We've known this entire time you're corrupt. What's different about this time?
Actually, what it sounds like is, as you said, it sounds like white people who are smugged out of a deal.
Potentially.
Who feel they were smugged out of a deal, who created a conspiracy to justify them being brushed out of a deal.
Potentially, yeah. So this theory basically falls apart under the light of scrutiny. I will say this, though. The information that deconstructs this theory comes from Nicholas Biwat. Because, I think it was, either sometime in the 1990s and early 2000s, he hired, a risk advisory group to counteract everything that was being said about him and to present all this counter evidence to clear his name. Now, he did have money, and the reason why the group was able to uncover all of this is because they had more access than Troon was ever given. Because Biwott was like, you guys better open up like, tell them exactly what they need to hear, but nothing more. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, like, it doesn't discount the evidence I've provided, but it just leaves us back at square one of it's not molasses, which means it's not the Washington, it's not suicide, it's not crime, it's not Moy, it's not business interest, because there's nothing that suggests that Marianne and Domenico actually went through with their plans.
So what do you think it was?
There are some people we haven't considered, and this is the one that hurts the most. Members of Ouko's own family. So as I mentioned earlier, like Ouko, or his brother and him had already fallen out. So like there was already some family drama percolating in the waters. It went largely ignored because like when the family members were asked about it, naturally they were tight-lipped. For a lot of reasons, because if you admit it, then you're suddenly a murder suspect, but also you don't want to air the dirty laundry of a dead man. According to his sister Dorothy Randiak, since 1985, Ouko and his brother had been on the outs following Barack's move from provincial administration to the Attorney General's office. Now, Barack was not happy with the move because of his aspirations. He one day aspired to be a DC and then a PC. And he felt like Ouko should have been able to stop the move, and he blamed Ouko for not stopping the move. So he took it really personally. And Dorothy claimed that this led Barack to grow increasingly hostile and antagonistic towards his brother. And it motivated him to turn more of his siblings against Ouko. So pretty soon, like, Ouko was kind of like growing isolated within his own family. For the most part, Dorothy says that Ouko rose above it all and kind of took it all on the chin and just simply refused to engage with Barack. But by 1990, all communication between them had broken down. So the question now becomes, did Barack's displeasure turn to hate? And was that hate intense enough to motivate this passionate of a murder? What do you think?
I don't know if I'm seeing someone else here laugh. I'm not getting something. Just repeat the question.
Okay, so we according to Dorothy, Barack and Ouko already had like a very tense relationship. Yeah, they had had drama. The question is, were the feelings of antagonism on Barack's part, did they eventually mutate into outright hatred? And is it the kind of hatred that could motivate you to orchestrate the bloody and, if we're being quite honest, passionate killing of your brother?
Okay, so I was writing what I had.
Yes.
I would be extremely cautious with that theory because I am an individual who has siblings. And
you mean to tell me you've never wanted to kill your siblings? Like, it's like you've never gotten to the point where you're like, this bitch.
Timo, you need to listen to this podcast.
Okay, no, it's because you're the baby.
The guy I'm talking about is her brother. Now, her brother has just found out that she's wanted to kill him all her life.
Okay, first of all, you are the baby. First of all, I never said that. You are putting words into my mouth. You are. I was just saying. Have you never thought? I never said all my life. I've just said, as a hypothetical, have you never been so frustrated with them? You're like,
I've been angry at them, but never wanted to kill them.
Okay.
Which is my point. I mean, it's I don't know family dynamics. You never know. There've been so many stories of families who have had that situation. However, I feel it's very difficult to say that my anger towards you could cause hostility to the level that
it's
I am
that
now
bad
going to murder you. I mean, it's happened in history, but I would not want to go there. I have other theories. He was a leader who was starting to slowly grow in popularity in terms of representing his area. Could it have been people from his area that caused this issue? I mean, we have to ask the question that we've asked now every episode. Cui bono? Like, who benefited?
That's the problem.
From his murder. I don't see Moi not benefited. Moi actually lost from his murder.
Because I think this was a final straw for a lot of international aid organizations, but it's too much.
And everything just started to blow up from there. Yeah. 4 months later, Saba. So Matiba. Then you have multi-party democracy. Then you have the crazy elections of 92, the 97. Like 1990 is when everything just escalated from Moi. So he lost. if you think about it, Anguka lost his reputation, had to run away.
He fled to the US.
In fear of his life.
Because I think he knew something.
Biwott didn't really lose because no one arrested him.
Well, actually, so what happened was he was suspended from his ministerial position in the wake of the Gashero Commission and also the first preliminary report that Shroon had drafted. But then he was quietly reappointed. Yeah. He was fine. It's fine.
So he's one I don't think lost very much. But that's the struggle I'm having with this murder series. I think in almost all the other assassinations we've talked about, apart from Aileen and Kariithi, we've been able to sort of ask ourselves who benefited and key out a few people we suspect of benefiting. I think this one of Ouko, I think you have a right thing, not the family part, but that there are other groups that we haven't considered.
I think the thing that, because if you remember at the beginning of part 1, I basically complained very much like men do about intellectual blue balls, because with something like this, the more you read into it, just the less satisfying it is, and then you're kind of just left wanting more. Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That's the problem. You go through all that information
and you're like,
sweet, then it gets to a point where you're like,
what the fuck? Because
I'm never gonna get the answer.
Because anytime I come up with a suspect, and you've seen me go through this in this episode, the theory is so flimsy, and I just don't understand why.
It reminds me.
It's the why.
Reminds me a little bit of. Well, she's not my favorite author, but one of the most famous authors in Agatha Christie.
Fair enough. She is a goat.
She wrote, I think everyone can say her most popular piece of work.
Isn't it Murder on
the Orient Express? And the whole theory is that everybody stood to benefit from the murder of this individual, but no one had the full motive. There were alibis for everyone. And then the question at the end is, when you ask who did it, the Inspector Poirot comes and says, the only way this makes sense is not that one person did it,
but everyone.
It's that everyone did it.
Like everyone played a little role.
Played different pieces of the puzzle to make this murder the way it was. And I think maybe in the Ouko situation, like the murder on the Orient Express, it wasn't one factor, but maybe a few that worked together to destroy this man and in that event kill him. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense for one individual. It doesn't make sense.
So my question is then, if it doesn't make sense, why is it that as a country, we all, if you ask a random person on the street who killed Ouko, probably 7 out of 10 times you're going to get them saying Biwott confidently with their chest.
They say Biwott or they say Moy?
Yeah. So what? And if you're saying Biwott, you're also saying Moy, right? So why is it that despite the fact that the facts tell us that we cannot confidently say that one person or another killed this person, we have continued to hold on to the, for want of a better word, myth that Biwott is directly and solely responsible for his death?
I think it's 2 things or 3 things. The molasses story went viral for a bit. Number 2, Biwott was this larger-than-life individual who everyone knew got down and dirty and did a lot of dirty things on behalf of Moy for those 10 years. And he was known to not be a nice man. So for many people, it made more sense. And 3, I don't remember, but I remember people hearing stories of that breakup that happened between, the rumored breakup that happened between Moy and Ouko in the US, that the rumor was that Biwott was also in that situation and was the one who was trying to get Ouko out.
Yeah, because I even mentioned that he was derogatorily calling Ouko Mr. President. It's that kind of high school jab that's like, ugh.
So that, I think that's why people point towards Biwott. I don't think anyone would say Anguka did it. I think maybe, I mean, when you brought the
it makes the most amount of sense.
Perhaps, but in terms of motive other than the relationship thing, why would this DO make this move and try and put himself? In fact, for the most part, if I had done it, like people who went to Anguka, I would run immediately. I wouldn't be arrested and then go to the US. So I would not hover over the murder. I would stay as far as I can from the murder.
So there is one more thing I haven't mentioned as we draw to the end of this episode, right? And that is the Wajakoya theory. Because I think during the campaign period last year, my God, it's been a year. During the campaign period last year, I distinctly remember the story coming out that he ran away from Kenya in the 1990s because he had uncovered the truth of the assassination. And that truth, and Special Branch. And that truth was that it was Moi. Like, Ouko had been shot in Moi's presence at State House. Wajakoya figured it out, and he was run out of the country. There's no factual basis for this, but it still has a hold on the public. It's such a nice story to tell.
Members of the Special Branch, because I know you listen to everything, please just tell us some of these truths. Please.
It's not going to hurt us if we know. Trust us. We're mature.
It's been 20 years.
We can handle it.
Moi is no longer with us. Biwott is no longer with us.
Yugi died.
Yugi is no longer with us. Anguka is in America. As in, it wouldn't hurt us to know who did it. I mean, as I keep saying, let's just have National Secret Uncovering Day.
Maybe that's what Mashujaa Day should be about, like a day of uncovering secrets.
Can you imagine if Special Branch and the NIS just released like documents, like what you said in the last episode,
like once every 50 years.
50 years, they just say, okay, you need to know.
Here, go look.
Yeah, it's like how the US has now said, they are UFOs. We've known for the longest time.
Or rather, we've been studying it.
We've been studying them. But you see what I'm saying? Like, there are certain things they're like, yep, you guys got it right. The conspiracies were true. There are weird things in Area 51.
That then raises the question of, we all know the CIA would not release information if it didn't have to, right? They're being forced to, and even they're being very careful about this disclosure. So let's say that Special Branch, CID, DCI, what have you, all these organizations and institutions, do you think that there's like a legitimate reason why they'd want to hold on to the secrets? Why they'd want to make sure that some things just remain buried? Why they are comfortable with Kenyans remembering a story and not history? Because that's what we're remembering. We're remembering a story that we were told.
I think when it comes to this situation, it's not... I don't blame the system in this situation. I blame individuals. Individuals are selfish. None of us want to be looked at in history as the villain.
Yes.
And so if we have there are very few, if we had the absolute power, even people who are villains work and pay countless amounts of money to work their image.
Isn't that why you have like that whole villain origin story? Like it's usually the sad story that completely justifies everything that you're about to do.
You see,
Thanos had one.
I think institutions are as strong as, especially Kenyan institutions and African institutions from the 60s to the 2000s, were as strong as the people who led them. So if the people who led them didn't want that information to be released, the information wouldn't get released. It wouldn't be documented. So I think I wouldn't blame the system. I blame these individuals, people who had the power to whitewash their names in history, to clean themselves, put some jik, not just a cap of jik, the whole damn bottle.
Would you?
I told you what I'm going to do. If I do bad things in my life, and I know we all do bad things in our life, I am going to write a book. I'm probably going to start like next year. Just like start writing on all the things I'm doing and all the bad things. And upon my death, that book will be released with all my secrets.
Okay.
Because I just want the world. I'm dreaming.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
That I'm going to be able to see it. I know I probably won't, but I'm going to be able to just see.
I mean, you don't know what happens when you die.
I just want to see the world, like, learn the truth. Why do leaders keep the truth away from us? Why can't they tell us about, because this is likely your last assassination, Tom Mboya.
Yes.
Chief Ward
This is exhausting.
J.M. Kariuki, Agnes Kodek, Pio Gama Pinto, and Robert Ouko. Why can't they tell us what happened?
That is a question that keeps running through my mind. Like, what don't you want us to know, right? Because I think about it in terms of like a parent withholding some information that is pertinent to their kids' lives for those kids.
But even parents today are realizing
like,
the better thing is just to tell them.
Yeah, because that's the thing. But governments haven't realized that, because governments treat the people like a bunch of helpless, headless chickens that they must corral and preserve for our own sake, because we do not know how to survive without the government. But the government has also created a situation in which we cannot survive without the state.
It's horrific. But I will end with something someone very smart told me.
Oh, is it me?
I actually don't know, but I don't think it was you.
Doubtful, but okay.
So he said, I think it was he, that when it comes to the truth, we've probably already heard it.
Yes.
It's just mixed in a sea of conspiracy. And so we know the truth, but we can never confirm the truth, which is the hardest thing about it. We know truths. Out of all these theories you have, out of the 6 suspects that you...
The truth is there. It's somewhere.
There is a 70% chance that those 6, one of them or 2 of them or an organization of them did it. But we will never know, because it's been mixed, because the truth means nothing in this society anymore. It's been mixed with conspiracy, with falsehoods, with opinions that we can never be able to sift through. We don't have a sieve, an electric sieve that can just say, okay, that's the truth.
And to add on to that, I would like to remind people of something you said a couple of episodes ago.
I'm a genius, aren't I?
Sure. And that was this idea that history is fundamentally propaganda. And that the stories we tell ourselves, that's not history.
No.
Those are the stories that have been carefully curated by a bunch of actors who are not necessarily working in tandem, but they each contribute something that then solidifies the story that we end up telling ourselves and what we end up remembering. And when looking at this particular assassination, I was completely struck by how the storification of history might be dangerous. Because in as much as it is not, and in as much as Biwott did a lot of fucked up things, as much as Moy also is guilty of a lot, he's not, I don't think they're individually or solely guilty of this. And associating them with this in that manner kind of undercuts everything else they've done, because now you've added in something that they haven't done into the many list of crimes, contributing to the delegitimization of that entire list.
But because we don't have the full information, we have become artists.
Yes, we need to be.
We draw our own conclusions.
Bravo. That was actually kind of good.
We draw our own conclusions as to the situations that happen. But I am a believer. The one thing I'll disagree with you about is the whole idea you said about how storification can be dangerous.
It can be.
My personal opinion is that I feel history... I said history is purely propaganda. But I believe in the propaganda. If you know what I'm saying.
But isn't propaganda just a fancy story you tell yourself?
Yes.
For example...
I think propaganda, it plays a role. It plays a very big role. Just in how it played a role using the propaganda of Manifest Destiny. That was propaganda.
Yeah. Based on history. Based on a skewed version of history.
What did it do? It built a nation. It built a nation
at the
on
cost
falsehoods.
At the cost of another people.
It built a nation on falsehoods, but it built a nation.
On the bones, literal bones of another.
I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying, but that's what stories have the power of doing. They have a power of motivating a people, whether on truth or not, to become something larger than themselves. And that's what I feel as Kenyans, as Africans, we have been grown up, built to look down upon our history, upon our story. And it's because we've not done a good enough job in building our history into a story that motivates people to grow bigger and better.
I also think that because, rightfully or wrongfully so, we are the victims in much of history, not just like as people with melanated skin, but also as formerly colonized, now neo-colonized nations. We are the victims as the people, and accepting that fact is really hard.
By the way, just on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, we had said we're going to have this like...
I mean, to be honest, you know what? For anyone that's still listening up to hear you're a G, you're a real one.
And you find us interesting, and we are interesting.
We actually are very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been keeping an eye on the growing rhetoric by African leaders.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. Ooh, I love it.
Whoa. You know, it's been growing as an undertone for like 10 years.
But now people are out here saying it. Like, blatant. How dare you?
Now, everyone knows I'm not the biggest fan of our current president. But he has the balls.
He has a point
to say things that are true. Cyril Ramaphosa, if you hear what he said about how the West has treated us.
Yeah.
And then the most. Let me not lie to you. She is the best prime minister. She has the best speech writer.
Is this Barbados?
She's the greatest orator of our generation. This prime minister of Barbados.
Let us not loiter on colonial premises.
Ooh. You know, she said, we're calling this conference the How Dare You Conference. And then she continues breaking down how dare you. And it's just like, it's true.
It's because every single person has asked this. And like, if reading African history is just a lesson in how dare you.
How dare you summon us.
How dare you summon us.
Summon us here to talk about an issue
that you have created.
And you don't even solve the issue. It's just fluff. So I'm just saying, I am loving, because you spoke of neocolonialism.
Oh, no, join in, because somebody's been sitting on the couch the entire time. I'm not sure if you're able to hear him.
Where did you guys see that video? I'd like to see the
How Dare You.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the description.
YouTube.
But I saw Cyril Ramaphosa, I saw
Ruto. Listen to her. Listen to the Prime Minister of Barbados. She has the best... That lady needs to be an orator. She reminds me of the power. Number one, her voice is so bassy. And she reminds me of a Martin Luther King.
Like a speaker that genuinely just...
A speaker.
Maybe she should have been asked how long you've been a woman.
Come on now. Come on now. What you saying?
I feel she is one of the greatest orators of our generation.
The only question...
It goes Obama, who we don't believe in everything he says. But
oh my God, the way he speaks. Woo!
Bro, the guy can sell a dream. So Obama, it goes to people like her, and there's another guy in India, I can't remember his name, but there's an Indian guy who was talking about the situation in Ukraine. He was a foreign minister, and he was telling the Western media, very simply, basically, look, we as Indians, it's the same thing Africans have said, we believe in peace, but don't assume that we're going to believe in peace at the cost of our people's prosperity, which for me is like...
I just hope that this rhetoric is signaling a much bigger shift towards unity. Because for the longest time, I think we've always desired Pan-African unity and the unification of the post-colonial world, because we all have incredibly similar struggles. But for one reason or another, basically being fucked with by the West without lube, we have not been allowed to attain this unity. But I'm hoping that now this rhetoric is suggesting that the scales have officially fallen from our eyes and we're done.
As someone who became...
The scales falling off of your eyes. It also comes down to a concept of individual greed. Look at what Museveni did to Gaddafi.
Okay, yeah. Let him out try.
What I would say is that as a person who's been a Pan-Africanist for 7 years now, since 2015, when I went into university, and I got what my teacher would call endarkened by the history of Africa and became a very big Pan-Africanist. Now I've calmed down. I've gone through the Mandela period, went from the extreme...
You basically mean capitalism has kicked your ass.
I went through extreme. Now I'm a moderate Pan-Africanist because I had believed in the United States of Africa. Now I believe it's a dream that can't happen. But for the longest time, there has been an undertone for the last 10 years of African leaders starting to say, we're not going to believe in the relationships you guys have
anymore.
And it pushed last year people like Macron to come to Africa and go on what he called...
an apology tour.
The apology
Not
tour.
just him, it also pushed Germany to acknowledge that they did a genocide.
Germany.
Oh my God.
So,
and also the Belgian royal family returning Lumumba's tooth.
There you go. And now the next step has happened, where African leaders have realized that their population is now in support of them being vocal about the stance that Africans have towards global issues. And to the point where people are clapping for Ruto to say, we want a new financial order that is not dependent on the IMF
or the World Bank,
because they have their owners.
They do.
For someone to say that powerfully, I give him a big round of applause, because he said it with his chest. That's what he did. And so
say it with your chest.
We give him the great thing for Ramaphosa to come out and tell people, look, the way you've treated us in front of their faces.
Of course. The only question is like, shaming somebody only works if they are capable of feeling shame. Like the reason why, for example, the reason why I firmly believe like trying to shame somebody like Donald Trump will never work is because I fundamentally believe he does not feel shame.
But I don't believe the goal is shame.
What is the goal?
The goal is proving to them an enlightenment
that
of
what?
Their worth. So what Africans are saying,
I get it.
What they're saying is, we see
that
how we have unwillingly helped you keep the world order the way it is, and we will no longer play ball. So they're saying, y'all will either have to tie us down, or you're gonna have to let us fly, because we are no longer gonna accept the world order the way it is.
At the same time, in as much as we say we're not gonna let you guys control us, so on and so forth, as I said, this goes beyond the leaders speaking. We only had Ruto Ramaphosa. What about the other Africans? That's number one. Number two, you also have to forget that colonization was a complete success.
It was.
We're all speaking English.
Well, I think in English.
Yeah, colonization was a great success. And not just colonization of the mind in terms of language and way of thinking. The colonization of corruption was also a factor. Because even when we went deep into the slave trade days, it was not the whites who are coming deep into Kenya.
No, you're right.
You had black people finding black people. So that mindset of corruption where a white man or the West can still say that, okay, Museveni or Ruto is going against us and IMF, we host a coup, we support Raila, we support whoever it will be at the time, oust him and put in this guy who will keep quiet. Look at what happened between Gaddafi and Museveni. The only reason Gaddafi built a mosque in Uganda, Gaddafi helped Museveni regain power. Gaddafi helped Museveni gain power in the initial stages of when Idi Amin lost power. There was another contender who was way more prominent than him who went to an election, and Museveni just did what Raila did. And he called a runoff and then went into war. And Gaddafi is the one who sent forces to help Museveni win that war. Uganda was Gaddafi's second home in Africa. And after all that love Gaddafi showed, the only reason Museveni snaked him is due to the fact that he didn't want to be commanded, and number one, not commanded, but he didn't want to be the most powerful person. He didn't want not to be the most powerful person in Uganda.
Okay, number one, as someone who loves history, I don't know that part of history, so I can't really speak to it. But what you are saying, just in case people couldn't hear, it's all about interest.
Yeah.
And it's all about self-interest.
Yes. That's if it benefits me to speak out right now, I will speak out. If it does not, I won't.
But
How many African presidents?
No, but
look at the whole of Francophone.
No, this is my point. They are speaking out.
They rejected the CFA.
Yeah, they are speaking out. Just wait. They're speaking out, and it is now that's why I'm saying you're not realizing that there's been a small revolution, because it is now for the first time, maybe not the first time, but for a big chunk of the time, the first time in their interest to together speak out against it. That's a big issue. That's a big deal.
It's a big problem for our colonizers because it recognizes
their interest to now say, by the way, why can't we trade not in the dollar? As in, if you go, because I watch the randomest things on TikTok. Last thing as we close, because I know you're getting too much things to edit, and I have.
It's not the editing; it's the fact that you have somewhere to be. But it's okay, boo boo. Good talk.
But as the last thing I will say is that, with all this in mind, it is on TikTok. I've been watching videos of Americans saying how they're in trouble.
Yes.
With the dollar. Because Africans are starting to realize
it's bullshit.
It's bullshit, and the rest, and China is starting to BRICS especially, because they're very scared of BRICS. Is starting to realize that they can command a huge force against the Americans and NATO, and that is now what is happening in this. Like, there's a change. Africa, for Ruto to say, why can't I trade with Djibouti using the Afro-Exim Bank, using my Kenyan shillings? The Afro-Exim Bank does its manenos and pays Djibouti in the Djibouti's currency. Why can't I do that instead of using the dollar, which means now that the dollar is at 140 shillings, the debt I have to repay you skyrockets as well. It's unfair. Anyways.
Okay, wait.
And also,
Uh-huh.
and also, what do you call it? If we could go back in time, the only thing that we can go to save the whole of Africa, to get the United States of Africa, as Kariithi was saying, was to go back to 2008, 2011, and give Gaddafi nuclear weapons. That was the only way.
AX, you finish?
Whoa, guys, I am not equipped to talk about nuclear proliferation. And on that note, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We've had a lot of fun. I really hope you've enjoyed the political discussion at the very end. I think I'm done with the assassination series, at least the Kenya-based assassination series for now.
I had so many suggestions.
If I'm going to do anything next, I'll figure it out. I have some ideas.
Can I throw some ideas?
No, we need to go.
No,
just goodbye.
Just
I swear to God, I'm good. No.
One.
Bye.
One.
Bye.
Okay, fine.
Say bye.
I think you should talk about a milk crocodile.
I did. Hi, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you've made it this far, you are a real one. In advance, let me apologize for how janky the audio for this one is gonna be. My old outro, while the audio was fire, it just wasn't giving what it was supposed to give. So I thought, let me just re-record this. So like I said, thank you so much. It really does mean everything to me that you've given me your time of day, your attention, so that you can listen to me chat shit with my friend and learn about history. It really means so much. If you want to connect and if you want to continue these conversations, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok. My handle is at utajuahujui.pod. That is at utajuahujui.pod on Instagram and TikTok. Once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really hope you've enjoyed this series, and until we meet next time, remember, you are loved, you are valuable, and you matter. Bye!